Hey folks, welcome back to Kadena Campfire. I guess this is community call number 8. Wow, time sure flies. And we're lucky to have Emily Pillmore back with us here today. Hey Emily, how are you?
Hey everyone, doing great.
All right. So today we're going to start off with some updates. We just had an ecosystem report that was published. So as this slowly becomes a Twitch live stream, we're going to try presenting that and walking through some of that. And then subsequently, we will take some live Q&A from Discord, from Twitter, wherever you may be watching. Please feel free to ask your questions, and we'll get around to as many of them as we can. So the exciting moment when we find out if Tyler knows how to share a screen. Let's find out. Ah, look at that. Technology working. So this just went out this morning. We have the Q1 newsletter. So this is, I think, pretty exciting. Yeah, first one of the year. Would you look at that? So first up, as many have been following, hash rate has absolutely exploded over the last few months after Bitmain shipped the KA3. And that's also in conjunction with some other partners like Kadena Mining Club and NoPool that have started to really reinvigorate the Kadena mining ecosystem. So you can see on this chart that there's been a huge explosion now, surpassing 500 petahashes per second. This, of course, directly links to the security of the network and is a huge benefit to ensuring that Kadena remains a vibrant proof of work ecosystem. So absolutely huge to have the support of the top dog in the field, Bitmain, building miners. Additionally, transaction counts have increased about 45% from the beginning of the year and significantly more than doubled, nearly tripled from March 2022. So this is just an indicator of some of the increasing adoption of users and projects of the ecosystem. And yeah, you can see the monthly transaction count has been having a very steady, nice, massive improvement, now reaching 1.3 million monthly transactions. And check it out. We got some grant updates. So for those that have been following the campfires, you may have heard a little bit about these already, but just to go back and give a quick re-update, we announced the first of our two, let me rephrase that. We announced the first two of our second cohort of grantees. This is NoPool and Teller. So NoPool, and you should go back and check out the campfires and AMAs that we did with both these projects in the past few weeks, but NoPool, powered by Massive, is a green mining pool that ensures no centralization, reduces carbon footprints, and has no fees for miners. So pretty remarkable. First decentralized mining pool in history, and supported by Bitmain as well. So I think this is a pretty sweet first example grantee for an infrastructure type of play. And then secondly, Teller is a decentralized Oracle protocol, and this allows smart contracts to trustlessly receive external data. So that data could be something like prices of different assets. Maybe it's a Bitcoin USD price or KDA USD price, or it could be really anything that you wanted to. It could be that the winner of March Madness wasn't San Diego State University, or it could be that whatever you want. It could be the temperature of Portugal yesterday. So a lot of possibility for what you can do with an Oracle, bringing data on chain, and the testnet code is live. So I think this is a hugely exciting opportunity for developers and folks that are building out applications to think about how you can leverage Teller and leverage an Oracle to bringing new experiences to Kadena. And then finally, of course, we have new grantees in the pipeline that we're excited to announce as they're ready on a rolling basis. But also we have some other grantees that have been busy innovating from previous cohort 1. Namely, we have Koala Wallet. Been huge updates there, including the in-app NFT support. So I think that's really exciting, being able to have that kind of native and really well integrated support of NFTs in a wallet. The team's also putting a lot of effort into a new Kadena Block Explorer, which will have a much better interface and lightning fast indexer to offer a more seamless experience. So stay tuned for that. Second, Hypercent launched their NFT marketplace. So that's pretty sweet. Great chance for more art NFT projects on Kadena blockchain. And finally, Crank began their rollout of their beta launch, which is now offering licenses to both Crank and Helium miners to secure beta to secure Crank nodes. So this is pretty exciting because folks that are currently mining Helium now have an opportunity to come over and switch to joining Crank. So this will hopefully be a boon to that ecosystem as more folks are able to adopt, and we'll get more and more Crank nodes out there. So exciting to see that progress. I know that project's grown by leaps and bounds in terms of having hundreds of nodes that are operating, and seems like it's growing nearly exponentially by the day. And yeah, that's kind of the update here on the grant side. Emily, maybe I will play the role of the scroller here if you want to talk us through some of the tech developments and upgrades.
Yeah. So I can't speak too much to what's going on with Chainweaver, but I can say what's going on with Pact. So Pact recently, as I think developers knew, we released sometime in early March a new version of Pact, and this new version of Pact featured, I think, the first step in a long series of steps where Kadena is sort of legging in on the L2 conversation. And we did so by implementing zero-knowledge primitives and built them directly into the language itself. So we hope to enable developers to make use of sort of more L2-oriented primitives and maybe increase throughput, increase settlement times, increase sort of finalization times through the use of various L2 memes, basically. We plan on producing POCs for all of these things over the course of the next 6 months or so. Yeah, there's a lot moving in the space, and Pact will be the central place in which you see changes and help for developers. So watch the space, watch out for our POCs, watch for what we're putting in Pact, and hopefully we can steer towards an exciting, new dimension in Kadena ecosystems. So, yeah.
Right on. So yeah, and then I guess just briefly, there's a token policies tutorial for Marmalade that was released. So for those that are in the NFT developing space, definitely check that out. Particularly shows how the NFT collection supporting presale could be implemented in Marketplace. Pretty useful tutorial. Then on community marketing and such, as you know, this is a really big ask from community last year and in January to have increased engagement interaction from the team at Kadena. So the campfires that we're hosting here today are a direct result of that ask from the community. So we've been hosting a community campfire every week now for the last 8 weeks, I believe. And we've had a continuing rotating cast of characters and guests, including some regularly returning stars like Emily. And we'll also have some, additional special guests, like we'll have, Stuart on every once in a while. We'll have some folks from the development team like Randy on. We'll have other folks from across the Kadena team and the Kadena ecosystem. So stay tuned for these. We've also started to do builder calls, which are more intimate conversations with builders and developers and the tech team. Happen every 6 weeks. And this is a more direct line for engineering conversations to talk about latest updates on Kadena, as well as get feedbacks and suggestions from builders to help shape future roadmaps. So you can apply in this blog post to be part of the next call. Finally, starting to grow a lot on the front end side. So the Kadena JS team had a great presentation at JS World in Amsterdam in terms of talking about the Pact smart contract language and starting to grow access to building on Kadena and growing on Chainweb across the ecosystem. And then we had a pretty active month of March attending ETH Denver, where both our COO, Anastasia Bez, and Kadena Eco CEO, Francesco, were present and speaking and connecting with folks. Also hosted a great party. So anyone that's at some of the upcoming crypto conferences, will be sure to share when Kadena is throwing events, and would love to see community at those things. A lot of fun. And also, if you haven't seen Anastasia's Bloomberg interview, definitely go check that out on Bloomberg TV. Had about 10 minutes live on Bloomberg TV talking about Kadena. was pretty badass and incredible to see that reach and see that validation from some mainstream media. And I think that gets us to our conclusion, which is, hey, look at that long-term vision, providing the tools and infrastructure necessary for everyone to create a decentralized internet that is open, inclusive, and accessible to all. Well, with those sage words, I'll end the screen share and we will jump in to our live questions. Oh, I need to catch up on everyone that's been chiming in. Hello, hello. Look at that. Wow. All right. A lot of engagement that I've missed. Sorry, folks, but we're catching up here. Great to see everyone on the stream. Great to have so many people tuning in. Yeah, my shirt is less impressive than usual. Sorry, I just did laundry, folded clothes, and couldn't bear to bring out the clean capybara. I got to save it for a really special occasion. No, I'm kidding. I'll bring it out next week. Let's see here. All right, so I'll continue to try and catch up with some of these comments here in a moment. But in the meantime, we'll jump into a first question. Maybe I'll direct it towards you, Emily, from Exam B. We know that Kadena scaled from 10 to 20 chains. How do you know that the next time is going to work again? Is there a test environment where you test scalability?
Yeah. So there are tons of environments that we're using in the background to sort of validate our changes to the blockchains. And this includes any kind of fork or any kind of sort of additions to the consensus mechanisms. We do this through either testnet or we have devnet available. I think publicly you can run your own devnet and you can sort of simulate your changes and pull whatever you need in and test out new versions of Chainweb. One of the big things that we do is we do full replay every time we release. So we make sure that nothing is broken and we can simulate the forking changes before we actually release. One of the things that happened between the 10 and 20 chain fork, for example, was we actually have versions of Chainweb that are built into the code itself that allows us to sort of speed up the fork point. So we can do it after maybe 50 blocks instead of however many we're at now, several million. And we can test the semantics of the additions to consensus through testing, through seeing it in real world. And there's no hurdles really other than making sure we can pass that and pass replay. And I will say 20 chains required a change to our architecture that allowed us to sort of abstract over the ability to expand to arbitrarily many chains. And we got that done 3 years ago, 4 years ago, whenever it was that we actually forked. So we've had the capability built into the nodes for years and years. And I see no problems in the future other than the UX problems of, how do we now display 100 chains, for example, or 50 chains, 200 chains, 1,000 chains? And we do have to solve that. But from a consensus point of view, we're solid.
Right on. Thank you. We'll catch up a little bit with some of the live stream here. Looking like people are looking for some s'mores. Wizza. Yeah. Wow. A lot of engagement. Beautiful new newsletter. Thanks, Cloud. Yeah. I'm clearly about 5 minutes late on that one. Let's see here. Hello. Oh, I didn't mean to hit that. Gotta hide this. All right. So we'll hop in here. We have a question about Marmalade. I think maybe you're not the best person to ask this because I know you're more on the Pact side, but when Marmalade will be fully deployed? I'm not quite sure what they're asking, but maybe.
So I understand where they're coming from. So Marmalade has kind of been in a little bit of flux in the sense that we don't really know what a finished product looks like in terms of what coverage we want to supply, what what the endpoint we want to sort of cut it off at and say, here you go, here's a finished product, here's Marmalade in whatever iteration that means. And it could just mean the contracts. in which case a little bit more polished and we can push those out, and then it's fine, and we could say that's it. But I think what we really wanted to do was polish it to the point where there are absolutely no problems that can go wrong, and have a front-facing, user interface in the form of the Marmalade marketplace that people can interact with, as well as POCs built on top of it that are actually in the works. So one thing that we can do, if you want a more in-depth update on that, is get Randy on here. He's building POCs for it as we speak. And if you want to play with the contracts are for the most part finished, and they exist on our Marmalade repo on GitHub. You can use them. People have already been using them in the real world. Like, what was the one? The CatX Cats project. I forget the name of it, but lots of people have already started using it. And if you want to get started, there's nothing stopping you from forking the repo and loading in the contracts and getting a marketplace stood up. So,
yeah. Kitty Cat, I think.
Kitty Cat, that's the one, yeah.
Right on. Yeah. Also, just heads up that there's some bot spam stuff happening in the chat, so sorry about that for folks that are getting distracted there. Let's see here. Have another question here from Sleet Chim. Why is Kadena Eco not more involved in the campfire?
Just a correction. Kitty Cat isn't on Marmalade. Sorry. I got that.
Oh, no worries. Why isn't Kadena Eco more involved in the campfires? Well, first of all, I'm going to sort of put my hands up here, my best emoji, and say, well, I'm part of Kadena Eco, so here at a lot of campfires. I'd like to think that Kadena Eco runs the show here, but ultimately we're one feature of several. And when can we have Francesco on? I can definitely ask Francesco. I think there's certainly no objection to him being on a campfire. Really smart guy. I think he tends to prefer more individual one-on-one type of interaction, and doing a lot of work at conferences and behind the scenes, building out new partnerships. And he's probably done about as much as anyone in terms of onboarding new projects and new builders into the ecosystem. So we try to put him in places where he's most effective and able to really excel at that role. Let's see here. From KDA Minor, when marketing lead? Other than that, I love the fact that you keep rolling. You guys rock. Thank you so much for the positive words. And as for when marketing lead, I think it's a good question. As we've posted several times, there are open positions that are hiring for Kadena. And so I think if you are someone that has strong marketing experience and that's of interest, you should definitely go check out some of those job postings. Otherwise, we have some of our advisors, like Brooke, that have a strong marketing background, and trying to incorporate that advice as much as we can. And finally, I hope that some of these efforts, like the community campfires and more regular YouTube events, and there's another question down below that about Whalecoin AMAs that I'll get to in a moment. It's definitely a high area of focus for us, is to increase the communication with community and to increase additional information dissemination. The newsletter you saw is another example. So we're definitely putting effort into marketing and spreading the word. I think getting our COO Anastasia Bez on Bloomberg TV is a huge deal. That's a pretty incredible financial reach in terms of media. So definitely an area of effort. So we're hearing the community's requests and definitely reacting to it, because oftentimes you folks have good insights. And so I appreciate the question, and definitely always looking to level up our game. Let's see here. Hello, my question is, if KDA programming is much easier, what is a plan you have to call new projects that come to build in Kadena? Interesting question. So we think about the grants program as one way to help new builders get onboarded. We've also put a lot of effort into documentation, particularly from Randy's team, and also tutorials. Thomas Honeyman's Real World Pact and the Chakra Lending Protocol are examples of some pretty intermediate to advanced level apps that are now well commented and motivated with a white paper, etc. And we'll hopefully have an AMA technical deep dive on that in the near future. But then I think Kadena JS is a huge prong of this effort, trying to make Kadena and Pact more accessible to JavaScript programmers and developers. So this is a huge area of focus for Kadena, is getting Pact to run everywhere. And Emily, I'm curious if you have any other thoughts or things to add.
Yeah. So I think this is a hard one. I think people tend to build where there is interesting stuff going on, and there's an opportunity to make money. I think since the beginning, Pact has kind of taken the tack that, we don't have all the tools necessary to bring literally everybody in, because we're not targeting literally everybody. We're targeting smart contract developers. And smart contract developers are people who are smart enough or interested enough to get involved with blockchain stuff, and see the value of sort of purpose-fit languages that do everything they need to do. And two, we look for people who are getting paid to write languages, because the best language that you know is the one that you're getting paid to do. So we hope that building the ecosystem and building out opportunities in terms of this, L2 pivot and all these interesting sort of POC projects that we're coming out with will be the thing that brings people in. So we have a good language already. We have a language that's had good feedback from smart contract developers. But the problem that we've seen is not that people are so, I suppose, inconvenienced by the language, but the fact that they're inconvenienced by the limitations of the network itself. And we're providing the expansion of that network that allows them to build whatever they want and build the kinds of systems that we see from sort of modern smart contract ecosystems in places like Ethereum. The fact that people are building these things in places like Ethereum shows the need. And, in those cases, they actually have to build a lot of this stuff. They have to build their ZK primitives. They have to build their cryptography and that kind of thing. And we want to supply it out of the box with some existing sort of primitives to help move that stuff along, so that you don't have to, and you can just get building. So that's the strategy.
Right on. Thank you. Future moves. What's with the arcade NFTs? They legit, someone says, if not on Marmalade, it's a waste of time. So outside of announcing grantees, we don't take any official stances or recommendations on individual projects, so I can't comment there. But on the Marmalade side, what I'd just say is that we try to get everyone building on Marmalade because standards are generally good and they simplify the ecosystem. Mm-hmm. But there are areas where Marmalade has limitations, or there's room where there hasn't yet been a demonstrated use case, and projects that are first to use that can hit up on those limitations. And so just because someone forks Marmalade or does something a little bit differently isn't, in my book, necessarily a red mark against the project. And I think we'll continue to see this, where if there's a feature in Marmalade that isn't there yet and someone forks the code and changes it and launches an NFT, then perhaps that'll be upstreamed into Marmalade one day. So not commenting specifically on Arcade here, but I'd say if someone has a really good reason for forking Marmalade and making some change to it, this is the nature of open source code, and that's totally reasonable. But there are cases where people are not using Marmalade due to some misconceptions about how things are done, and we try to help those projects port their code over to Marmalade. Or some projects that launched before Marmalade was launched. We also try to help them port the code over to the standard. So hopefully that's at least a little bit insightful, even if it doesn't directly answer the first part of the question. Then from Trias GM, any comments on the new partnership with Whalecoin? Yeah, so we've done a couple AMAs and discussions with Whalecoin on Twitter Spaces. They've had really good attendance. There's been 400, 500, 600 upwards, 1,000 people that listen in. And they've been good quality discussions and reaching new audiences that aren't all already in the Kadena ecosystem. So we're excited about that partnership as a way to help reach a broader audience as part of sort of initiatives around marketing and increasing community engagement and finding new builders and folks who are joining the community. So yeah, thanks for the question. Definitely excited about the partnership with Whalecoin, and curious to see how that grows and does. Let's see here. I'll just quickly acknowledge this. Had difficulty applying for position on the website. Yeah, feel free to ping folks if you didn't get a response. Sorry to hear you had some difficulty. I'm not entirely sure which website you're talking about, but hopefully the job board. But yeah, there's definitely a lot of applicants, but it always helps to be, I think, perseverant and to show that you're a good member of the community and involved. And yeah, I would encourage you to not give up if you're passionate about Kadena. Here we go. That's the job board that you should look at if you weren't already. Suggestion here about there's open positions, but not listed on the famous blockchain hiring websites or LinkedIn. Can you post them there to increase reach? Yeah, I think posting on LinkedIn makes a lot of sense. That's something we should definitely look into. Blockchain hiring websites. Yeah, I'd be curious if there's specific ones that you find most compelling. Always looking for more information about where people are job hunting. So any information you have to share there would be useful.
Let's see. I actually haven't taken a look at how our interview process works. So I think Greenhouse is the only place I know of that people can apply, but I think you can apply through the site too. Yeah, I'm not sure. That's not a good question for me. I don't have a good answer.
Let's see here. Janecraft, sorry I missed your question. If you want to ask it again, go ahead. There's a lot of comments that I might have missed it. Sorry about that. Let's see here. Oh yeah, I'm still about 10 minutes behind our live here. All right, gonna have to blow through some of these to catch up a little bit here. Bring Francesco here from one of the next campfires. Anyone from the Echo team? Cool. Thanks for the suggestion. I know Jeff and Mateo will look into who to schedule for the future campfires. Love this question. I was wondering if I wanted to learn how to code on Pact, how would a novice go about doing that? Any suggestions? Thanks. Yeah, I would really encourage you to look at Real World Pact as one resource, and also the Kadena tutorials for Pact. And Emily, curious if you have some other suggestions as to what someone might do.
So Real World is so far the one that we've gotten the best feedback on in terms of ease of coming in from the ground floor and then getting up to snuff on actually producing contracts that would run in the real world. I would add to that there's tons of documentation. There is a read the docs if you want to learn the specifics of various semantics in Pact. And there's also the documentation site, docs.kadena.io, which has a lot of Pact tutorials and stuff. Alternatively, you could, so in addition to those, not alternatively, hang in the Discord, hang on the Kadena Telegram, Kadena Sisters Telegram, where people actually talk about how to do good smart contract development. It'd be good.
Right on. Question from Trios GM: how can faster transactions be achieved? So I think it's an interesting question. We talk about finality times quite a bit. I think on one of our last campfires, we talked a little bit about some of the upcoming efforts around ZK and layer 2s and some intriguing developments that are coming down the pipeline over the next few months. But I think in general, we've also talked about how there's a user experience element here where depending on the application, it depends on what you mean by faster transaction. If you mean access to some privilege on a website, then you can do that by querying the local node and seeing if the transaction is likely to go through, and then sort of extending the user the grace period of accessing the service while finality is achieved. So I think there's a number of ways to tackle this. And yeah, I don't know if Emily, you want to add on more to this? I know we've covered this quite a bit in past campfires as well.
Yeah, I would see the actually last week's campfire with Lars, where we talk about how finality actually works in the network. I'm not going to say, hey, you don't want this, because clearly there's a use case for this and it's payments. But um, we are pivoting to L2 precisely because it's both, I think, a better deal to talk about payments in terms of L2 settlements, and it's the kind of speed that you're looking for. In terms of what the actual blockchain is doing, I think there are alternatives that have sort of fast finality at the expense of various things like block size and sort of smart contract capabilities. In which case, you want a sort of glorified consensus payment mechanism. In which case, okay, that's fine. But I think we are first and foremost a smart contract platform, and that entails a certain amount of complexity in each of our blocks that fast finality kind of, or sorry, not fast finality, that longer block times kind of require. So in our case, we are, focused primarily on that, and we're hoping to provide a solution for you sometime coming up in the next year. Yeah. If you want the real specifics, just watch last week's.
Perfect. Have a bit of a meta comment, less a question from Mr. Kennedy B. I feel like proof of work chains could really work together in the future and make proof of work greater for anyone. And there's sort of another discussion point from 619YZ. Can't proof of work projects work cohesively instead of fighting each other? Shouldn't we all be actively improving the community? Yeah, so I think these are both really nice points that in general, when trying to grow community and when trying to grow community in spaces that involve other projects, that being respectful and appreciating rather than fudding or dismissing or criticizing tends to be the better approach. I guess I'd go back to Dale Carnegie's famous How to Win Friends and Influence People, in which there is no chapter on insulting people and then trying to convince them over your viewpoint, but rather there's quite a few chapters on listening to people and trying to relate to them and find similarities. So if I was talking to someone that was a Bitcoin maxi and trying to convince them why they should come to Kadena, I'm probably not going to start off by just bashing Bitcoin script and how it's so difficult to use, even if I may feel that way. Instead, I'd probably appreciate how Bitcoin had some core insights into how this idea of proof of work can create a strong centralized network, but has yet to come up with a solution for, well, actually, maybe I'm rethinking my phrasing as I go. And Kadena saw that insight and was able to come up with a way to extend it to scaling transaction throughput and also adding additional smart contracts. So I think that coming up with ways that we can sort of talk and appreciate something about a project and then say, here's how Kadena is similar and here's how we've been able to extend and contribute some new advances tends to be a productive way to have dialogue. And I think it's always better to complement a project for what you like and then share something about what that person might then find interesting in, rather than to immediately go for the jugular and criticize and try and show them why their viewpoint is dumb or stupid. So
I will say that we've done this in the past and it really hasn't worked out for us in terms of, kind of glass houses problems, right? We have our own problems, we have our own use case, and the answer is not one blockchain to rule them all. It's a lot of blockchains doing particular things, because certain orchestrations and architectures make more sense for certain use cases than others. I would like to work with Caspa. I think that would be cool. They are fast settlement and fast finality. And we have an excellent smart contract layer. I don't see why that can't work. In the same sense, we can work with Ethereum. They have a massive ecosystem, and maybe they need some things with lower fees and what I would argue to be a more robust smart contract language. So all of this stuff can work together.
Well put. From 619YZ, would love to see some smaller projects in interesting niches such as cybersecurity and AI on Kadena instead of ETH. Looking forward to seeing how the next 12 to 18 months plan out. Yeah, I think that's a nice point. I've been pretty curious to see how this intersection of large language models and AI combines with blockchain, if it does. I think the Bloom project is a pretty cool example of distributed computing and large language models. And I think there's some natural analogies to some of these distributed types of computations and some of the things that blockchains seem to be good at doing for ledgers. Yeah, I think this is an area that's rife for innovation. And if anyone is interested in building this space and has some expertise, please get in contact. We'd be definitely interested in looking at grants and such. And finally, if you are involved in any of these projects that in cybersecurity or AI that you're seeing in other ecosystems that you think are really cool, it would be fantastic if you would ping us about it. I'd be curious to hear what you find most exciting 619YZ, and maybe there's ways we can approach those projects for partnerships or help people get started on building next generations of those projects on Kadena.
Was that aimed at me?
If you want to take it, go for it. I can bring it back up.
I'm going to avoid this one.
Okay, sure. Let's see here.
Yeah, there's an update on the ledger situation, which I see in the comments being talked about.
Oh, please.
So Ledger said it's in final review, which means we go through a final review step in order for them to list it on their marketplace, which requires, and it seems like they're trying to take the onus off them to do the audit of the code themselves, which they have done in the past, which has sped things up significantly, but also led to exploits. So we're working with acquiring a third-party auditor to work on that app to make sure that it's sound. And once we get that finished, say a month or two, however long these things take, it goes in.
Perfect. That's exciting. I cannot wait until when Ledger gets replaced with the next when XXX question. That'll be a good day.
Mm-hmm. When Coinbase.
When Coinbase. Oh God.
We'll be back to that one. We did when Binance, and now we're on Binance.
That's right. That's right. Actually, that's one of my favorite AMA questions. Is we'll still every other campfire get someone that asks when Binance, and
when Binance last year.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. From Chaincraft, sorry I keep missing this question, but we're getting to it now. If a project was thinking of using Kadena blockchain as a database for its IoT project, would this be a good use case for the network?
Yeah, we've actually already got a project on there called Crank.io, Crank with 2 Ks, that is doing like an internet of, or a decentralized internet platform, proof of network, I believe it is. And they have devices that they're giving out to people, and it's working extremely well actually, because you can kind of spread consensus out across the entire network, and it makes a lot of sense to have like regions partitioned by chain. Yeah, it's been cranking along, no pun intended. I think it would be a wonderful use case to see more sort of Internet of Things devices with a decentralized network, popping up on Kadena. So.
Right on. From Breaks, when Kadena Community DAO? When Kadena Eco DAO? When will the community have a say in what Kadena does with platform emissions and grants? I think that's a great question. So there's been some discussion around DAO infrastructure. I know Will spent a good amount of time building out some pretty cool code for different sort of messaging type of applications and DAO management. And there's been a couple grants that have applied for running kind of a DAO-based community style grant program. I mean, the community grants program is sort of a first stab at that. Not the full DAO implementation, but more community input. And I think that it's an idea that we'd love to drive towards. I would love to see, a DAO that can help manage emissions and help to grow the ecosystem, because at the end of the day, the collective power of the ecosystem, the collective power of the Kadena army is really, really high. People are so passionate about this project, are so passionate about Chainweb, and many people spend hours every day just following the latest, discussing the news, contributing to projects, and that effort is hugely valuable. So figuring out how to harness that type of insight into helping projects grow is, I think, a really cool proposition. Now, I think the main challenge is, of course, the devil's in the details. So with DAOs on other chains, we have seen a large amount of grifting, and we have seen quite a bit of challenges when it comes to treasury management, and not allowing people to run off with the keys to the treasury. And so I think it's an area where we want to be cautious in that we don't want to have what happened to Sushi Swap or Wonderland Time or Olympus, or a lot of high profile DAOs that kind of Constitution DAO or different DAOs that kind of became kleptocracies. And so there's, I think, a fine balance between how do you find the right technical implementation, and there are some technical implementations that I think one could use or build on Kadena that would work quite well, along with how do you sort of get the right infrastructure in place and the right people in place to ensure that the operation runs smoothly and well. So I think it's something that definitely is of high interest, and the question really becomes, how do you demonstrate that an organization is sufficiently responsible to capitalize it to that extent. And something I would love to see, for example, is if community members want to start a prototype of what this DAO could be. It's a open blockchain, open network. Start a DAO. Grow the Discord community. Give out some small grants or equity type of investments using community raised funds. And if you show that this DAO has some promise, then the DAO itself can apply for a grant, and that'd be a great way to get started, right? To get a small grant, see how that goes, and then to allocate funding as demonstrated by capability and prowess. So I think that really this comes down to the people that are involved in the DAO, the structure of the DAO, how it's built out, and definitely we'd love to see it happen. But as the sort of more centralized entity, it really is, I think, upon community in part to demonstrate how to build a DAO that is well functioning, and then we are in a position to help fund it. And let's see here. Emily, do you see any other questions that you want to chime in on here before we part ways on the campfire?
What dApps would the Kadena team like to be developed that hasn't yet and would fit Kadena's strengths? So Pact is kind of purpose fit for writing your own token. We haven't seen any security or real sort of governance or stable coins that I know of on the network. Go for it. Like, we want grants for this stuff. I think stable coins would be a wonderful addition to the network. And yeah, go for it.
All right. Kind words from Rob. Compliments for maintaining the weekly campfire is really important. Appreciate it. Those kind words help keep us going.
Yeah, it's been pretty successful for, how many has it been? Like 2 months worth now? We got Stuart on here once. We got Lars on here. We should definitely keep these going. This is the right direction for sure.
All right. Well, folks, really appreciate everyone tuning in to today's campfire. Been another great discussion. Covered a lot of ground, and it's been fantastic to have these live, super interactive conversations. And please keep up the engagement, keep up the encouragement, keep up the building, keep up the marketing. I think it's a really exciting community, and we're delighted to be members of it, and really happy to be hosting this space quite often. So we're looking forward to the next iteration and getting some more builders on this call, and appreciate everyone's time and attention today, and hope you have a great rest of the week. So until next time, we'll catch you later.
Yep. Thanks, everyone.